Hey folks, this is JR with DIY Prepper. Welcome to the channel. As I'm sure most of you are aware, there is a pretty gnarly winter storm heading for a lot of us right now. I know it's probably going to be the worst in the Midwest, places like Chicago and Detroit, but other areas of the country are going to be affected as well. I know down here it's supposed to get to like 11 degrees, which is pretty low for these parts. And they're expecting there to be a lot of travel delays, and then there's probably also going to be power outages and issues with other utilities just because that's what winter storms do. So today I thought I would just go through some quick and easy things that you could do to prepare for this thing if you're in its path. And most of the things that we talk about today aren't going to be stuff that you go out and buy or you order online, because we don't have really enough time for a lot of that stuff. So it's just going to be more or less using what you already have. And just as a warning, this video probably isn't going to be as polished as most of what I put out there, just because I think that it would be a little bit more useful to go ahead and get it to you guys and just kind of deal with a more rough cut kind of look, if you will. But one very good, just simple thing that you can go ahead and do right now is just charge as many batteries as you can. So that's going to be if you have rechargeable batteries like AA, AAA, D cell, stuff like that. Also portable power banks for things like cell phones. Of course, you can charge other things like flashlights as well. But also, if you have power tool batteries, go ahead and top those off. If you have things like lanterns or flashlights that run off of those, then you can use those batteries for lighting purposes, just as an example, and then save your other batteries for other needs. And you might also need to make some quick repairs, so having some batteries for like your cordless drill could come in handy. Then of course you want to have your emergency radio topped off. Really keep an eye on your cell phone as that storm draws closer. And if you do lose power, probably the first thing that you should do is just go ahead and turn that to low power mode, save as much battery as you can, and stop doing non-essential activities on your phone, like watching cute cat videos or whatever big multiplayer video game all the other cooler YouTubers are promoting right now. If you have a solar generator, that's another very good thing to go ahead and top off, especially if you just have the power station, you don't have panels with it. Go ahead and get that up to 100%. Then also other devices like your laptop, things that have batteries that can hold a charge, and you can use that charge to power up other devices. And it doesn't even have to be the laptop that you're normally using right now if you have one. It could be something like an older laptop. As long as the battery is in decent shape, doesn't matter if you don't use that anymore, you could use it still as more or less a battery bank. Then also, since Christmas is coming up, if you use something like a DSLR or a separate camcorder, I know most people just use their phones nowadays because there's really not any reason not to, because the cameras are so good on them. But if you have something else that you use, go ahead and charge that up also, so that if Christmas comes, if you don't have power, you won't be in a bind because you don't have your camera. Another good thing to do is to top off things like gas cans and propane tanks. And I know that's going out and getting something, but to me that's not really the same as going out and trying to buy a bunch of supplies at the supermarket when it's slammed because of the storm and Christmas, both. Just drive through the gas station, fill up your gas cans if it's safe to. And then also another thing, if you have propane tanks, I would call ahead and try to go to a actual propane dealer. Probably be a little bit less crazy than some big box stores that offer those kinds of services. That way, if you call ahead, you'll know if they're slammed or not, or if they're closed down for one reason or another. Another important thing to do is to have a place ready for your pets. If you have dogs that are outside, go ahead and bring them in so that they don't freeze, because this cold weather, it can be brutal on them also. You also need to have your preps organized and ready to go, so food and water at the top of that list, but also blankets, because they can be used to create microclimates. We've talked about that in some other videos. Even if it's something as simple as figuring out a way to suspend a blanket a little bit over your bed that can trap that heat and help you stay a little bit warmer. But they can also be used for things like covering doorways. If you have a doorway that's real leaky and you don't have like either painter's tape and plastic sheeting to cover that up, then just hang a blanket in front of it. It'll help. Then also you can use them to cover windows at night if you don't have that aforementioned plastic sheeting and tape. Now, the sheeting and tape is a better option because it kind of gives you almost like a little greenhouse effect during the day. So what I would do with those is cover up the windows during the nighttime where you're not really having any sunlight. Then take them down during the day so you can allow that light to enter your home to give you a little bit of light, then also to heat the place up a little bit. You also want to know where your heater is and any fuel that you plan on using for that, along with fire extinguishers, and that is a big one because if you're using things like heaters, then your chances of a fire goes up, and during a winter storm, the chances of your fire department being able to put that fire out goes way down just because of road conditions, and then also if there's problems with water utilities, they're not going to be able to access the water they need to put that fire out. Another thing you may want to do is cover up your grill with a tarp if you're planning on using it after the storm passes. That way, all you got to do is yank the tarp off. You don't have to like scoop off snow off the top of it and all that mess. And the same thing goes for your car if you have a tarp that's big enough to cover that up. Also know where any utility shutoff tools may be, like I have Vlad the Impaler here for my water utilities, and I can also just use an adjustable wrench for things like shutting off gas. And if you have something like a snow shovel or other winter weather tools, go ahead and have those accessible also. Another thing that you probably want to do is go ahead and fill up your bathtub and other containers that you may have laying around the house with water. And they don't even have to be food grade or squeaky clean necessarily. You can use that water for like flushing toilets. During the 2021 Texas ice storm, a lot of people had to go out and melt snow and then use that to flush the commode just because they didn't have water utilities. But if you store water ahead of time, that's not really going to be a problem. And let's say you're somebody that drinks bottled water a lot of the time, like you have a few packages stored in your house. Maybe consider drinking tap water for a couple days, but if that's completely disgusting, go ahead and use your bottled water like normal, but save the bottles, fill them up, so that way you have at least some backup quasi-potable water in your house if you need it. Another thing you want to do is test any gear that you'll be relying on, and probably the most important one of those is going to be your generator. When the snow's falling or the temperatures are already down ridiculously low, that is not the time that you want to figure out that there's a problem with your generator. So go ahead, get it out, run it for a little while, and if you need to do anything like change the oil in it, like it's time to do that, go ahead and get that over with so that you don't have to do that when conditions have already gotten bad. Another thing you may want to check on are, well, that you definitely want to check on, are going to be things like your fire extinguishers. If it has a gauge on it, make sure that that little needle is in the green because that means that it's good to go and can be used in an emergency situation. Also, check out your smoke alarms. Make sure those have fresh batteries in them because once again, fires do increase during winter storms like these. And if you're going to be relying on a heater, you probably want to go ahead and turn that on also just to make sure it works. Another thing that I would go ahead and do is take care of any dishes or laundry that need to be done, just so you're not laying in a pile of your own filth for a couple days if you lose power or water. And when it comes to laundry, aside from just clothes, I would prioritize things like blankets and especially anything like more cold weather related. And when it comes to blankets, that's true even if they're relatively clean but have just been sitting on a dusty shelf for a while, because if you need them, especially if you have allergies, that's probably not something you want to deal with. Just go ahead and take care of that while you have a couple of days to do so. If you have something like rock salt or ice melt, go ahead and add that to your driveway before conditions start to get bad, so that way you have a little bit less work you'll have to do if you need to get out and about. You also want to make sure that your pipes are insulated and any spigots that you have outside are either covered up or dripping. And when it comes to insulation, if you have like maybe a faucet outside that has just like PVC sticking up out of the ground, I know those aren't ideal, but people do have them, and you don't have any pipe insulation, then a pool noodle can be a good substitute if you have some of those left over from the summer. And then also, as far as protecting your pipes inside of your house, go ahead and open up things like cabinets underneath your sink, so some of that warmer air from the house can at least be somewhat closer to like pipes that are in those exterior walls. It doesn't seem like it would do that much, but it is definitely better than not doing it at all. If you don't have any off-grid cooking methods because either maybe you're a new prepper and you haven't got around to it yet, or maybe you're somebody who found this video after the storm has already started, you've lost power and you're like, how do I cook? Well, then you can do things like make an alcohol burner out of a couple of Coke cans. I think it was Survival on Purpose did a video over that a while back, and it's really good. I'm not going to reinvent the wheel here right now just because, like I said, I want to get this video out to you quickly, but I'll be sure to put a link in the description below for that. And those can run just on isopropyl alcohol, Everclear. They're very handy. Another thing that you can make is called a buddy burner. If you have something like a tuna can or like a small flat can that something like canned chicken came in, then you can take one of those, clean it out, get yourself some cardboard like all the boxes that all the gifts came in were made out of, cut it in thin strips, kind of coil it around inside of that can like a snake with the holes in the cardboard facing up, and then pour a melted candle into that. And what that's going to do is basically going to make a big honking wick that can produce some pretty decent sized flames, and you can use that to cook over with. I would probably recommend using that outside just because, especially if you have something like a large like tuna can or some other larger like diameter can, it'll probably have a pretty big flame, so you want to be safe how you use that. Another small thing you can do is just roll up towels, put them at the bottom of a window if it's leaky or something like that, so that way you stop drafts, but you still allow light to come in during the day. And y'all, I'm sure there's like a million other things that you could do to get ready for a cold weather power outage that somebody like me who lives in an area where extreme cold is relatively rare may not know. So if you're somebody who lives in, especially like, you know, the Midwest, Northeast, Pacific Northwest, where it can get pretty honking cold, and especially my Canadian friends, y'all know what it's like, go ahead and drop some helpful hints down in the comments below to help people out, especially things that would be useful if they're already in the thick of a winter storm. They found this a little bit later and they're desperate for help to find out what to do now that they're in that situation and maybe aren't as prepared as the rest of us. So, thank y'all for stopping by. Y'all have a good one.